Welcome to another episode of Junior Achievement of South Florida's Recipe for Success. Just as there are no two recipes that contain the exact same ingredients or measurements, there are no two success stories exactly the same. Recipe for Success features entrepreneurs, visionary leaders, and innovators of all ages who will share the ingredients that make them successful. Here's your host, Lori Salarulo, President and CEO of Junior Achievement of South Florida.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of JA's Recipe for Success. As you know, we bring leaders and entrepreneurs into our kitchen, my kitchen, JA's kitchen, wherever it might be in this times of the pandemic, and talk about the ingredients to success. And some of these leaders, and I know today's guest will be equally as inspiring, have truly just shared some amazing recipes with us. And I hope that you're all inspired by these interviews as well. Today's guest is someone that I have known, I'm not even going to admit for how long, but he was, as my son just said, my son wasn't even a twinkle in my eye when I knew this guy. And but to watch him over the years, and we've watched each other grow and become better leaders, I think, in this community, and very involved leaders. And so I want to welcome my friend, more than anything, President and CEO of the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, Mr. Bob Swindell. Hello there.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for that great introduction.
Oh, you're welcome. I said, I can remember, right, throwing your birthday party. I think it was your first birthday party in our home. And so we have been through a lot of things together. And so
I'd like to say it was my first surprise birthday party. But
my surprise.
I don't think you were there for the first one.
That's true. It was your first surprise birthday party. And it was
you guys surprised the heck out of me.
That I had something to do with it. So, one of the things that I love most about the show is, I do get to bring some of the people that I've known for a long time, but, it's funny, we go to all these networking events and do all these things together, but we don't often get a chance to have these kinds of conversations, right? And so I've watched you as a leader, and I'm always, admiring the things that you've done at the Alliance, how you've grown it, I think the leader that the organization has become, right, in our community around workforce and economic development. And so that's been a real honor. But today we can talk a little bit. Oh, I got the producer on hand here, Mr. Patrick. Can you produce from over there for us, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And so today, though, I love that we have the chance to talk about those ingredients. And so for those that don't know you as well and as long as I do, share a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today. Because I knew you when I first met you as an entrepreneur.
Well, thanks again, Lori, and thanks for the opportunity. And you're right, we don't always get authentic opportunities to get to know people that we enjoy spending time with. But you're right that a lot of the receptions that we go to and those other opportunities, we have just minutes with people, and it doesn't give you a chance to dive very deep. So you've known me over the years. If someone had asked me 20 years ago, would you be doing economic development, I probably would have said, well, what is economic development? I own and run a small business. That's economic development, right? And what you learn when you do this job is, there's a lot of definitions for economic development. You do economic development. Junior Achievement is has a huge role in economic development and preparing our young people for careers, for their own business. They don't necessarily have to have their own business, but they understand more about business and how business operates. So I had what was a local plumbing supply business, and we grew it to covering 7 southern, southeastern U.S. states. Great business. It was a repair parts business, and built a good team of people. A lot of the foundational things that we learn as good leaders, you really learn, as you work with folks. And I always studied people that I admired and identified their skills and what they did well. And then equally, I would see people that I didn't think a lot of their leadership skills and their management. I'd say, okay, well, that's what I don't want to do. So I think, that's, part of, what you bring to a position or a role that you have in an organization is that life experience. In 2003, when I started with the Alliance, I knew the CEO. We served on a couple of nonprofit boards together. I didn't know him well, but I knew him. And the opportunity, actually a good friend who you know well, Nancy O'Donnell was her maiden name at the time. I actually had gone to take her to lunch to think it would be the next chapter in Bob Swindell's life. And I walked over to her office. She was with FAU at the time, and I walked in her office. She said, I just got this email that there's a position available for the Alliance. And I'm like, what's the Alliance? She said, they do economic development. So I'm like, okay, well, again, that's a pretty broad phrase. And she's like, no, it's the Vice President of Business Development. You'd be marketing and promoting Fort Lauderdale as a place to do business. I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool job. As somebody who grew up in Fort Lauderdale, that would be something I would enjoy doing, and it would inspire me to come to work every day. And that's literally how I found out about the job, and that started my path. And it goes, it goes without saying, but I will say it. Your friends and your network are important, and it may not be for the original thought that you had when you approach somebody, but that lunch just to talk about, what would be good. I've known Nancy since I was in college. We went to the University of Florida together. It was the opportunity to bounce some ideas off somebody I trusted. I never anticipated that it would actually lead to what I would be doing for, the next 20 years of my life. So it's funny when people ask me how long I worked at the Alliance. I usually say, 3 or 5 years, and people that are around me are looking at me, they're like, are you serious? You just say 5 years? And I'm like, well, yeah, it feels like 5 years. But it's hard to believe it's, been 17 years I've been at the Alliance, a whole new career, and not something that was anticipated. But I use good, you learn business skills and all those experiences you learn in running your own business, and a lot of the qualities that Junior Achievement teaches young people are the things that you draw on. So when I came to the job, I didn't know the technical skills of the job, but I had a pretty good business background. And I was really lucky when I came to the Alliance. There was a fairly good-sized team of folks that knew the programs, and they did the technical stuff. So we worked really well together, and that I could easily talk to a business person that was considering a move to Fort Lauderdale and talk to them about business and some of the costs that they might be encountering. And then the team then could fill them in on here are some of the programs we offer. So it was a great way for me to learn more about the specifics of the business, but also to share with my team some of the general business information and background that I had. So that's how the role at the Alliance started. I hadn't planned to become CEO. That happened as well, and that was interesting. We work. You and I share in the fact that we have a board of directors that we report to. So I have about 80 some bosses, and they all have individual.
I think we're now at 72.
So it's a lot to manage, but you also get phenomenal input. You get different perspectives. I wouldn't have it any other way, and I've been really fortunate over the years. I've had some amazing board chairs. David Armstrong was my first board chair, and he was my board chair for my first 2 years as CEO. And David, the former president of Broward College, was just, a phenomenal mentor. He understood working with boards and really just gave me a really good foundation. He was incredibly supportive of me. And we all know those the first couple of years are really important. And, how you lay out, your vision for the organization, and you get your board to help shape that. But when I took the job, I asked the current chair at the time, Peggy Nordine, if they wanted, more of the same status quo, if they wanted transformation, because that was important to me in considering the job. And she said, "Do we want transformation?" I'm like, well, if you want transformation, that's an opportunity that really intrigued me.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really interesting because when I came on at JA, I was clearly told we needed transformation, right? We had an amazing leader who got us to where we got to, but we knew that it's kind of like today, right? I've said to my team, what got us from here to here, right, is not going to get us to here. So we need to change the way that we're doing some things, and maybe your vision even, your core vision stays the same, but maybe there's some slight differences in how you get there, right? We talked a little bit about that and prioritizing, right? And making sure that you're doing what you have the capacity to do in today's, right, situation that we're in. I think one of the things that I love most about a JA is our JA Fellows program with the entrepreneurship program. And I think back, you had the opportunity to work with your dad in the business. And I can't even imagine, the things that you learned from him. Share a couple of lessons that you took from there and from working with him to the Alliance and to all that you do.
So yeah, it's great that you mentioned my dad. He turned 86 about 6 weeks ago, and he's in good health. We had a good time for his birthday, and he lives up in Stuart now, as you know, but he's doing well. And some really strong values that he taught me early on, was the value of the people that you have on your team. And he was a big fan. He was a consummate salesman, and that's how he started the business. And his relationship with people, he was one of those. We often hear it. Well, he never met a stranger, but my dad really never met a stranger. He was interested in people, but he also taught me a lot about cushions and verbal cushions. If you've got bad news to deliver, you start with something positive. And you have those conversations one-on-one and not in a public setting. One of the other things he taught me a lot about people is when you recognize folks, there's nothing more powerful than when you recognize a key team player in front of their family. The pride that they have in that moment is something that you can't replace with anything else. It's nice to recognize, your folks in front of the team they work with every day. But given the opportunity to recognize people in front of their family and loved ones, really is unique and special. And that could be as simple as you see somebody at dinner when you're out and you just say, hey, you know that your wife is doing an amazing job. And, you hope that they overhear that a little bit. But it's not really, it doesn't have to happen, because typically the spouse will go back and say, hey, Bob was bragging on you and said this. That is really something and that was one of the things I learned from my dad. So it's those little psychological things that are important to people. He said that the two most important words to anyone is their first and last name. So names are important. He taught me early on, when you go to dinner and someone comes up to wait on you and they check on you, would you like some water or anything else, always get their name. And so you build that as a habit, because he was in sales. So it was really important for him to know the person's name that he was talking to. Like early on, when I started working here at the Alliance, we had a security guard in the lobby, and she's still here. Her name's Darlene. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to see this person every day, I'm not going to just say, hey, you. It's important I know her name and learn a little bit about her and what she does, her family, what's important to her. Does that have any direct impact on what I do? Well, not really, but I think it's important that you know the people that you see and engage with. And it's important to know someone's name. I also learned pretty quickly from my dad that, the gatekeepers are really important. And I would work with salespeople, and they would dismiss a receptionist like the receptionist was beneath them, and they wanted to get to the real decision maker. And we'd walk back out, after a sales training session, and I'm like, you realize what you just did? I said, you will never get to that decision maker ever. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, you can't belittle people and think you can bulldoze your way. It might work once in a while, but I'll tell you, your chances, when you look at your odds of success, are going to be pretty dismal. So it goes back to learning people's names and, knowing the first time you're not going to meet that decision maker. But when you come back in a month later and you talk to Peggy and say, hey, Peggy, good to see you again. Peggy is like, well, he remembered my name. So if anything, that gets you a couple of points. That, again, it doesn't open the door automatically, but you do things like that consistently, and you care about people, and you take a little bit of interest in others. It makes for a much better business life, and you find yourself to be a lot more well-rounded and enjoy what you do and take those moments of time.
I think, and really, I mean, when I think about all those examples you just gave, it's really about making people feel special, right? And your dad is great at that. He is a schmoozer. I love every time I see him. He gives me that big hug and smile, and he's happy to see you, and he makes you feel special, like you're the most important thing in that moment. Okay, honey. But so I think that all those things you're talking about, and boy, I can tell you, I'm glad I know your gatekeeper, because she's my Helena. But you're absolutely right, and I think I learned the same thing from my dad, that and he always used to say, be nice to the people on your way up, because those might be the same people you meet on the way down. Always, I can remember that, right? And so same principle, same idea. And Bob, you always make everyone feel special. So, economic development, like you said, everybody has a different definition of what that means and what's in it for them. And right, so you have different constituent groups all pulling at you and wanting different things, right? From your organization, from you as a leader. How do you balance that, right? How do you make sure that you are answering the call of each of the different groups that you deal with? How do you make that work? Because I know, we have a similar situation, but how do you make that work? You've got some really high-powered people you're dealing with.
That's a great question. And, you and I, we take our mission seriously, and we want to help people. I mean, that's the bottom line. I think why you do what you do at Junior Achievement. It's why what I do at the Alliance, when we look at job growth, and it's, there's nothing more powerful than when you meet someone who has a job at one of the companies that we work with that is new to the community. And just through conversation, you find out they're working at Magically, or they're working at another company. And that's like, wow, that's, they will never understand our role in that process, but it's really fulfilling when you meet someone who has a job with one of the companies that we work with. I got really great advice early on from one of my vice chairs about mission creep. He said, like Junior Achievement, when the Alliance as an economic development organization builds a reputation as being able to get things accomplished, people will come to you with incredibly important issues. And they're, and as a human being, you're motivated, you want to, try to help. But Steve's advice to me was, be real careful about getting outside of what the core business of the Alliance is. And you mentioned economic development. So for the value of the folks that may be watching this, the way we look at economic development is pretty simple. We have 4 core components to what we do as an organization, as a business. The first is to market and promote Greater Fort Lauderdale as a business destination. So we spend a lot of time and effort on annual marketing plan that's both digital and print. And to your point earlier, the world has changed dramatically over the past decade. It's changed tenfold in the last 8 months. And how do you do what we have to do? The second part of what we do is manage projects. So if we have good marketing, hopefully, you get a business's attention. They're like, we've had people that have been sequestered at home for the last 6 months. We've talked internally, and we think that a location in South Florida makes a lot more sense for us, and how we see our business growing in the future. So managing those projects, hopefully they come through good marketing, is the second part of our core business. The third part is research. So that's market research. It's research for businesses that are thinking about the area. Sometimes our policymakers, our elected officials, they want some data and research and we try to be an unbiased and neutral provider of information. So we give you the economic data as we see it. We don't put any kind of spin on it. And then the fourth component of what we do is making sure that the public-private partnership is really strong. And when I say that, what does that mean? Well, we have 31 municipalities in Broward County. We have a strong county government. For us to effectively work with business and help businesses navigate through the process to open up or expand in Broward County, knowing those city managers is really important. Knowing county administration is very important. Knowing our electeds, it means a lot to a company when the county mayor attends a meeting or the city mayor of the city that we're looking seriously at moving into takes time out to meet with them. And I've never had a city manager or an elected official say no when I said, would you meet this business? They actually love those opportunities. And it means a lot to the business. So those are the 4 components of what we do. There's other things that are really important, like transportation, that definitely impacts our competitiveness as a region and as a place to do business. But we can't fix transportation. We can help and support organizations that do that, offer the feedback we hear from companies about logistics and what might be important for them for transportation in the future. But as important as transportation is, that's not something we can get in directly and get involved with. And sometimes people approach us about, specific transportation issues, and it's not our core business.
Right.
But there's so many good organizations that work in that area. They should take the lead, and so we try to support those that are in.
Yeah, you do a great job of that too. And so you have so many projects and so many things that you're working on and helping with, getting the economy going again, right? Recovery right now. So focused on it. You have the campaign going on to help the county. You have so many different things that you are managing, but yet your team is not that big. So how do you make that happen, right? What's the secret to that? Right, not having that many people, but yet making so many great things happen.
Well, thanks. That's a nice compliment to the team. We're about 17 people, and one of the things I really like about what I do is I enjoy coming to work every day. I work with a great group of people. It was really strange for a couple of months that we were all working remotely and really engaging in environments like this, so virtually. We made it work. But as helpful as virtual meetings are, you and I both know we don't replace the interaction we have as human beings. We're social beings. I mean, that's part of who we are as humans. But I have a team of people that really enjoys what they do. They love the community. They take pride in what they do. They realize how important it is. That a lot of us define who we are by what we do for a living, and so making sure there's opportunities for people to have a career, to be able to expand past an entry-level job. It's important that we have companies continue to move into the area and move into Broward and provide those employment opportunities. So that's a big part of it. The other part of it is, very much like Junior Achievement, we have business members. So we have almost 600 business volunteers that help us do what we do in many different ways. Sometimes they travel with us at their own expense to either visit a market where we think there's some companies that are eligible to move. They may want a South Florida location. Sometimes, you've been on the leadership trips. We had 90 people, I think, in Charlotte just before all the COVID hit. So February and first day of March in this year. But all those folks travel at their own expense because they wanted to learn. We admired Charlotte. They wanted to learn what Charlotte does well. And in that process, they've learned a little bit more about what Broward does well. And sometimes, they walk away saying, hey, Broward's pretty good in this particular area. I mean, I think we're better than Charlotte. They could learn a few things from us. And that's when you have a good give and take in the communities that we go and visit. So those volunteers are a big part of how we amplify what, 18 people, 17 people can do for the work that we do. And they do a good job of acknowledging and encouraging volunteers to have their time and get involved with us.
Yeah, and well, listen, my heart goes out to Gail because I know it's hard sometimes, right? You just say, oh, I can just do it myself. But because you're managing so many people and so many personalities and so many logistics, and she makes it look seamless. So you absolutely have the right people on your team. There's no doubt about that. And sometimes we think the grass is greener on the other side. Oh, maybe I should go live in Charlotte. I should go back to live in New York, or right, New York had this, New York. But at the end of the day, when you go back and you take another look, you go, oh, wait a minute, maybe this isn't so bad. And so you obviously thought this was a great place, because I believe you were born here and have not left South Florida. And so tell me, I know I often share stories about a sailing trip that we went on together. We won't share any of those stories right now, but so I know that being on the water is really important to you, and family and those things. But and you've shared so many amazing ingredients here, and I'm going to read off a couple, because it's interesting until you see it all down or you hear it, you don't realize how many things, right, have contributed to the success of that recipe. You talked a lot about building your network, right? You talked about how you got the job at the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance. And that was part of somebody in your network, right? Sharing that with you, and then bouncing idea off of others, knowing that we don't always know everything, right? And sometimes we need to get other perspectives, right? Especially with what we're going through right now in our communities. We need to hear each other's perspectives. And I love that about you, Bob. You do. You always listen and want to understand where everybody is coming from. Study the people. I love what you said. Studying the people you admire, right? And then also the people that you don't want to become like, right? And understanding that's not something you want to develop. That entrepreneurial spirit and having that clear vision, engaging partners and members, mentors, how to deliver news, right? You talked a lot about that. And sometimes in our jobs, we have to, right? And we have to make tough decisions and do tough things. And I love this one, that you learned from your dad about making people feel special, whether it's by knowing their name, understanding the role that they play and the importance, even though their title might not reflect that, right? And so I totally agree with that. Staying focused, making sure that you're building a team of the right people, the people who love the organization, love the community, love the work that you're doing, right? That's the why and the passion around it. And then managing all of the different people that we deal with and we have to please during these tough times, especially. Lots of great ingredients there, and I added that listening part there because you didn't mention it, but I do have to say you're probably one of the best listeners I know, and I think that's so important as a leader. It's something I work on all the time. With all of those ingredients, Bob, right? And I know you don't do most of the cooking at home, okay? I have heard that from little birdie, but but you watch probably. What is the main ingredient? Because every recipe has a main ingredient, a staple that keeps it together. What is the main ingredient to Bob Swindell's success?
That's a great question. I think it's you treat people the way you want to be treated. It goes back, it's the simple golden rule. You treat people with respect. You trust people. You approach from a source of abundance, and you catch people doing things right. There's a lot of folks that manage out there by catching people doing things wrong all the time, and we all make mistakes. But I think when I look at the ingredient that's made me successful is I treat people the way I'd want to be treated, and it could be at a restaurant, it could be at a retail shop, it could be on the phone with someone. When someone's trying to do their job, you may not be getting the answer that you want. But you realize that that's not necessarily their fault. So yelling or berating someone on the phone is not really probably going to get you any closer to what you want to get accomplished. Sometimes you have to ask for somebody with more authority. So it doesn't hurt, and it's no reflection on that individual saying, could you let me talk to a supervisor? But again, it really goes back to treating people the way you want to be treated. we have one of the other strengths when you talk about the team that I didn't touch on is continuity. A lot of folks have worked at the Alliance for a long time. So you create an environment where people also want to come to work and enjoy working. But I think when people realize that they're respected, that their opinions are respected, may not always agree, and we may make a different decision. But to your point earlier, it's the confidence that that I'll listen, the leadership team here listens, and we may choose a different path. And usually I'll try to explain why I made a different choice. Sometimes there's not enough time to explain as thoroughly as people might want to get the explanation. But that's part of they need to have confidence in you as the leader too. You've got a role as CEO of the organization, and that trust goes both ways. And so sometimes they may not fully understand, but if your team, you believe in your team, and your team will hopefully return that with trust and know that that you're making the decisions for the best interest of the organization.
Yeah, really, really good point. And I love it. Integrity, right? Kind of what you're talking about, treating people the way you want to be treated, and you're right. I mean, sometimes you don't get what you want, whether it's a call or you're in a store or whatever. And I know I always say to people, listen, I'm not upset with you, right? I'm just upset with the situation because I want them to know that, I might not be happy about the way this is being handled, but this is not about you, right? And even in my private life, I say that, I'm upset right now, but it's not about you. I'm just upset at the situation. And so I think communicating that and letting people know that is so important. But Bob, all I can say to you is that I feel privileged, and I mean this. You and I joke around sometimes, and we pick a little bit and all that stuff, and we have our private jokes. But I do feel so privileged to work with you. I feel privileged that you serve on the board of Junior Achievement. Because you bring the perspective, right, that we need as we get these young people ready, right? And you and I hear this day in and day out that we don't have a talent pipeline, right? And that it's dwindling. And how do we get them ready? And I know that sometimes I am just that loud voice sometimes, right? That's screaming, pay attention to the youth, because we're so focused on the adult issues that we're dealing with, right? And the economy but if we don't simultaneously prepare the next generation to take the reins, to be financially secure and to have that freedom, especially in our low-income areas, right? We know there's a divide of financial freedom and financial education. If we don't address that, where will we be? In 4 to 6 years, some of these kids are going to be out. Actually, some of them will be out in a couple. So I thank you for your support always of Junior Achievement and the work that we do, and for that alignment, right? And always working towards each other. We may not always think how we get there is the same, but we always have respectful conversation and share that and know that we have to make sure that we're preparing the future. So thank you for all that you do in our community, because I know that for you, it's not just a job. This is where you grew up, and this is the county and the place that you love. And I've come to love it too, even though when I got here, how many years ago? Gosh, Patrick's 28. So 29 years ago, I remember going, there's one theater, right? I looked in Manhattan and we had a theater, 20 theaters on a block. And I would be like, what? I feel like I'm in this little baby town here. But I have grown to love this, and it's home, right? And I think you and I share that in common, that we truly do care about this community, we care about the people. And so thank you for all that you do. We don't often get that, but thank you for your dedication and your commitment to your team, to the organization, and to our community, and to JA.
Well, thank you, Lori. Thank you for serving on the Alliance board. That's I appreciate your leadership and what you bring to our conversations. And you play such a critical role, and Junior Achievement plays such a critical role in touching every public school student twice, as they go to school. I'm a product of Broward County Public Schools, so I know the system pretty well. But the fact that every student goes through not only the center, but everything that leads up to that day of immersion really helps shape financial literacy, And they provide examples that they don't normally get at home. And you're right, if we are ever going to ultimately change the institution, and we wonder why, decades go by and we spend money, we talk about it, but we don't impact the core problems in some of our most economically distressed areas.
Yeah.
We've got to provide social mobility, economic mobility to our residents. And it's a vital part of what we do, what Junior Achievement does. And I think we've got a lot of partners that take that mission to heart as well. So it's important. And Broward College, who's a great landlord to Junior Achievement. But they are also Greg Hale's leadership. His personal story is inspiring. He and his team at Broward College are that unique ingredient as well that really can help prepare the next generation better than we prepared the last generation.
Yeah, we had Greg on the show actually not that long ago, and he talked about Broward Up and all of that. And we're proud to be partners of all of these initiatives. And 70% of the kids that we serve are from our lower income. And the remote center that we just opened yesterday, it was really about serving those communities, right? This was not about private pay people. They could go, form pods and spend their money and go to taekwondo places. Hi, buddy. Oh, thank you. Patrick had lunch while we were talking. I appreciate it. Good job. So that's what it's all about, right? We're fortunate to have opportunities, and we need to make sure that we give those opportunities to all the others, including our population with special needs. So, and so we actually are serving about 10% of the kids that are at the center right now, doing remote learning, are children with special needs. So I love you too, buddy. So,
and see, nothing replaces that hug. We can do all these virtual meetings we want, but a son's hug for his mom, there's nothing that can even come close.
Yeah, let me tell you, that is unconditional love. I mean, my daughter loves me now that she's 25. She didn't know.
She's learned how smart you are.
She did not appreciate my advice or my knowledge back then, but she does now, and I'm so proud of it. And I want to share this because Samantha. But Samantha called me the other day, and she was so excited, and I said, "What's going on? Like, what happened?" And she goes, "Mom, I have to share this with you. And I can't thank you enough." And I'm like, "Who are you?" Right? Like, is this my daughter? And she said, "Mom, there was a math class that she needed to get her AA degree. She failed it 5 times. She passed it on the same day that she got her degree. She signed up for FAU to go get her bachelor's. She also paid off her last debt, right? And told me she had $7,500 in the bank, which I said, okay, we're going out to dinner and you're paying tonight. Okay. And she said, and her credit score hit 700. All those times I talked about this, right? When we teach them, we think they're not listening. They are listening. And so here's this young lady who I didn't think was listening, right? And who heard it, right? Not every day, but heard it every once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's changed her life. The sheer joy that I heard in her voice, that she had achieved financial freedom of her own, right? It's kind of the joy in my voice I had to contain, but because she's off the payroll, but she was so happy, Bob. And that's what I want. That's what Junior Achievement wants for every single child, because we know we can't always change the behaviors of adults. Right? They're set in their ways, but we can change the attitudes and the behaviors and prepare our young people for the future. So thank you for being there. Thank you for all that you do and for advocating on our behalf. You are an amazing leader, my friend, and I'm just so proud to know you.
Ditto. Thank you, Lori. Great spending time with you.
You too. Mwah.
Bye-bye.